Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. As an avid Star Wars fan who has watched every movie and tried to read every book in the franchise, I've noticed a pattern in the politics that seem to be associated with the good guys time and time again. And that is libertarian ideology. Now, in the last few decades, the word libertarian has been associated to many things, both good and bad. So unfortunately, the term is quite polarizing and sometimes quite confusing to understand. So in an attempt to kind of distance ourselves from preconceived notions and the politics of today, we're going to give you guys a very simple and broad explanation of what libertarianism is and how it relates, at least to the things we're going to be talking in this video. So a libertarian is an individual who believes in political freedom and personal autonomy. A libertarian can have economically left-wing views or right-wing views, and a libertarian can be an anarchist or believe that a federal government and many of its services are necessary. And perhaps most importantly, a libertarian is anti-authoritarian. And from the original trilogy to the new trilogy, we begin seeing the franchise champion these ideas. An idea that is discussed in its simplest terms in the original trilogy and then evolves into something more complicated in the prequels and sequels. The original Star Wars film featured a ragtag group of farmers, bush pilots, and criminals going up against a larger and technologically superior galactic empire. One of the heroes of the rebellion is a moisture farmer living off the land and in isolation and out of reach of the empire. Luke Skywalker's life is hard, and his day-to-day tasks involve literally capturing moisture from the air in order to sustain his life. He relies only on his family and his local community and his personal skills. The federal government provides him with nothing, and in return, he pays them no attention. Although Luke is originally bored with his life and eager to join a local academy, which would most likely lead to him serving in the Empire, before he can join the quote-unquote system, the federal government comes and invades Tatooine, and in the process robs his family of their ultimate liberty, life. Now, Luke's main pursuit, at least in the beginning of this film, is more of a pursuit of adventure. Then we have Han Solo, a pragmatic smuggler who avoids causes like they're a plague. The only ideology he follows is his own pursuit of financial gain. The fact that he is a smuggler means he refuses to obey trade regulation or pay tariffs. He's an outlaw according to galactic standards, but is positioned as a hero by the writers. Our third hero is Princess Leia, the Senator of Alderaan, perhaps the most important figure in our discussion of libertarian values in Star Wars. Alderaan, in many ways, is the closest thing to a utopia in the Star Wars galaxy. It's a world of both natural beauty and social harmony. The people were generally highly educated, wealthy, and very cultured. Alderaan was known for its philanthropic endeavors, human rights, and personal liberty. The Alderaanians also were very politically active and involved in the Galactic Senate and their own domestic hereditary constitutional monarchy, led by the House of Organa as the executive branch, along with the Judicial High Courts and Legislative High Council. Although a hereditary monarchy seems like the opposite of what you would consider a libertarian point of view, the Organas, Leia included, were very humble leaders who served their people above all else. It also helped that Alderaan was about the size of Earth, but only had about a population of 2 billion people. This is also a planet that was culturally and ideologically unified, and a planet that possessed very, very advanced technology. So the population actually enjoyed stability and excess of resources and space. So Alderaan actually had a relatively small and efficient government, and if you look at the bigger picture, Alderaan, at least the Alderaanian government, is just the regional government, whereas the federal level of government would be the Galactic Empire. Now, as a young senator, Princess Leia focused mainly on helping various refugee groups across the galaxy receive the necessary supplies they needed in order to survive. Charitable giving was a part of the Alderaanian tradition. But of course, this was a cover story for Leia, who also served as a rebel agent who quietly was trying to create a rebel movement in opposition to the authoritarian central government. Palpatine had heavily militarized the Empire and nationalized many of the most important industries in the galaxy. He also drastically increased the size of the government and military until it became one of the largest employers of the galaxy. The military-first policy of the Empire reallocated resources and jobs from other industries and led to massive wage cuts, which led to a redistribution of wealth to individuals who ran government-owned or contracted enterprises. The Empire also clamped down on political and social freedoms by using its military and security apparatus. And so in the original Star Wars trilogy, you have this great totalitarian evil, and fighting against them are a rebel alliance that are very libertarian in their viewpoint and their purpose. Now, if we go back to the prequel era, we see what the Empire had once been, a dysfunctional republic that was weighed down by too many member worlds, too many senators, subcommittees, and way too many differing opinions and special interests. Chancellor Palpatine, a populist and reformer and the primary antagonist in the series, uses his political rhetoric and populist support along with the creation of the separatist threat to drive through extreme policies like the Emergency Powers Creation Act. Political maneuver that would give the executive branch a ridiculous amount of power, further upsetting the checks and balances that kept the Republic gridlocked. It's during this period of time we see Senator Padme Amidala, representative of Naboo and mother of Princess Leia. Naboo is in many ways similar to Alderaan and had actually originally been settled and founded by Alderaanians. Throughout the Clone Wars, Padme Amidala adopted a libertarian stance and remained an active voice against Palpatine's attempts to increase federal power. In a casual conversation with Anakin Skywalker about current-day politics, Padme shows a clear dislike for totalitarian rulers.
We need a system where the politicians sit down and discuss the problem, agree what's in the best interest of all the people, and then do it.
The trouble is that people don't always agree.
Well, then they should be made to.
Sounds an awful lot like a dictatorship to me.
She believed in the democratic process and saw bureaucracy and gridlock as a necessary evil, a part of that process. She was thoroughly against the Emergency Powers Act, which allowed Palpatine single-handedly to pass the Military Creation Act. Padme would go on to also oppose the Republic's financial reform bill, which led to the Republic borrowing more money from the banking clans to purchase an additional 5 million clones, significantly increasing the size of the military in war. Padme would also find herself opposing Palpatine's seizure of the banks, essentially creating a Federal Reserve Bank and allowing the Republic to directly control the printing and distribution of currency. Ultimately, Padme would be a part of the delegation of 2000, a group of senators who petitioned against Palpatine and his refusal to end his emergency powers near the end of the Clone Wars. Now back to Princess Leia. After the defeat of the Empire at the Battle of Jakku, she helped establish the new Republic under the leadership of Chancellor Mon Mothma. Eventually, over the course of decades, the New Republic Senate would turn into two factions, the Populists and the Centrists. The centrists were in favor of stronger galactic government and larger military, and the Populists supported more autonomy and sovereignty for its member states. Naturally, the majority of individuals who fought in the rebellion became Populists along with Princess Leia, whereas the centrist faction had many senators who hailed from formerly pro-imperial worlds. More than 2 decades after the fall of the Galactic Empire, many centrists were fascinated, if not pining, for the glory days when the federal government was strong under the rule of the Empire. In polite circles, however, the centrists were always quick to condemn Emperor Palpatine as a madman, but would oftentimes make concessions that he wasn't necessarily 100% wrong. It's the same type of arguments we occasionally hear about dictators like Mao or Hitler. It's oftentimes hard to understand the motivation of these comments. Does it come from a place of intellect or curiosity, or does it come from a place of kind of worshiping these monsters? And the same thing could be said about the centrists, who kind of worship the Galactic Empire. As a populist, Leia found herself facing opposition even in her own party, and also found allies in the centrists. Senator Leia was a strong planet rights supporter, but also aware of the threat that the First Order posed on the outer rim of the galaxy. Senators in the Populists and centrists saw individuals like her as a warmonger and alarmist. With the New Republic demilitarized and vulnerable, Leia thought it was important that the New Republic discuss what to do with the First Order. It was a difficult decision for her to make, and although she didn't call for the increase of military spending, she knew her own actions in many ways were opposed to her platform. Ultimately, the reveal that her father had been Darth Vader sidelined her from politics. Realizing that the federal government was incapable of responding to the First Order, she began creating a military force. Without government support, this organization would be known as the Resistance. The Resistance in many ways reminds me of the controversial constitutional militia movement that was very popular in the 90s, in response to the Waco siege and gun control legislation. Championed by former veterans, libertarians, and Second Amendment rights activists, many of these individuals established social groups and clubs that could be called paramilitary or vigilante organizations. These, of course, differ from one group to another, and not all these groups were necessarily anti-government. Some of these militias might be focused on more specific issues like illegal immigration. Nonetheless, it's important to note that Leia, after attempting to find a solution to the First Order problem within the structure of the New Republic Senate and failing, took matters into her own hands as a private citizen. Now, it's not known what the New Republic says about armed citizen groups, but it's definitely against this larger federal government centrist mentality. So that is our argument why Star Wars has a libertarian slant as far as how it portrays the good guys in the franchise. It's important to note that we here at Generation Tech neither support or condemn libertarianism, especially by the way we define it. I also want to make it clear that the libertarian values that we talked about are more of a textbook version of those views rather than an examination of real-world politics here on Earth. I'm also curious what you guys think. Have you noticed the same things I've noticed while watching these films, or do you think I'm wrong? Let me know in the comment section below. Also, don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button, and as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.